My husband's brother, Adisa, was always a quiet man. I thought he was kind. Maybe he was, once. But after my husband died, I learned that Adisa's silence held something dark. Before my husband died, life felt almost like a dream. He was a good man, a strong man who loved me fiercely. He would come home every evening with a smile on his face, lifting our children in the air and laughing like his heart was as light as a feather. Sometimes he would bring small gifts, a carved wooden comb, a length of bright cloth, things he'd save for, little by little, just to make me happy. Every night, he'd sit with me under the stars, telling me stories or singing softly until I fell asleep. I never knew I could be that loved, that cherished, but he showed me every day. Adisa, his younger brother, would sometimes sit nearby, watching us from a distance. I noticed his eyes, hard and unblinking, as he watched my husband's hand in mine or the way we laughed together. I didn't think much of it at first, but my husband once caught him staring and warned me to be careful of his envy. Adisa was always jealous of anything I had, he said quietly, his voice low. I brushed it off as nothing, but now I realized that Adisa's gaze held more than jealousy, it held hunger. It was as if he was counting down the days, waiting for a moment he could take everything for himself. The day after the burial, he came to me and told me that he wanted to be my husband now. Just like that, as if love were something you could pass from one man to another. I still remember the coldness in his voice. He didn't look sad. He didn't look sorry. He only had that blank look in his eyes, the one that always made me uncomfortable. I told him no. I said, my children are young. They need me, and I need to mourn. But he just stared at me, his face like stone, and said, you don't have a choice. You'll either be with me, or you'll leave. And I did. He threw me out of my own house, the house my husband built with his sweat. My husband's family watched as Adisa chased me and my children away with nothing but the clothes on our backs. My husband's family whispered, but no one dared help me. I guess everyone was afraid of him. So, I took my 3 children, all under 5, and walked until my feet bled. I stayed with an old aunt, my mother's sister, in a small village far from anyone who knew us. She took us in, gave us food and shelter, but we lived in poverty. Every night, I would sit outside her small house, look up at the stars, and cry for my husband. I would beg him to look after us, to guide us, and to protect us. My children saw me cry, but they never asked why. They were too young to understand, and I was grateful for that. After Adisa threw us out, I had to find a way to feed my children. Every morning, I take them into the bush to gather wild fruits, mangoes, guava, and sometimes bananas if we were lucky. We'd fill baskets until they were heavy enough to weigh down our backs, and then we'd go around the village, calling out to people to buy. It was hard work, the sun would scorch our skin, and the dust choked us as we walked from house to house. But my children never complained. They knew we had no other choice. With each coin we earned, I felt a mix of relief and shame, but I held my head high. I was doing what I had to keep them fed. Years passed, and somehow, we managed. My children grew up strong, hardworking, and kind. I taught them to be humble, to be careful, and to never forget where they came from. I was proud of them, and they brought me more joy than I ever thought I would feel again. When they were older, they found work in the city, and they sent me money, more than I could have ever dreamed of having. I never had to worry about food or shelter again. Then one day, a messenger came to my door. He was from my husband's village, from Adisa's family. He told me that Adisa had died suddenly, right in the house he stole from me. His heart just stopped, they said. No warning, no reason, just gone, like a candle blown out in the wind. When I heard the news, I felt nothing at first. Not sadness, not anger, just emptiness. Then, a strange feeling washed over me. A quiet relief. It was as if some shadow had finally lifted, as if something dark and heavy had left the world. After the messenger left, I walked outside to the little patch of ground where I grew yams and corn. I knelt down and whispered, "Thank you." Not to Adisa, not to anyone alive, but to my husband. I felt, in my heart, that he had watched over us all these years, that he had made sure we survived despite everything. They told me that Adisa had no children, no wife. He had spent his life alone, bitter, and jealous. Some people in the village whispered that he had been cursed, that he had been haunted by his brother's spirit. They said he would hear footsteps at night, feel cold hands on his shoulder, see shadows that vanished when he looked closely. And maybe that was true. Maybe my husband did come back for him. Or maybe Adisa's own guilt just ate him from the inside. All I know is that, in the end, Adisa got nothing from his greed. He lived alone, died alone, and left this world without a single soul to mourn him. When my children heard of Adisa's death, they came home to see me. They had grown into fine young men and a strong young woman, all of them successful, all of them proud to be my children. We stood together, the 5 of us, in front of the house I had built for myself and my children. And I felt, for the first time in a long, long time, that my husband was with us. He had kept his promise to me, even after death. And that's the end of the story. It's not a happy one, but it's not a sad one, either. It's just what happened. Life has a way of balancing things, even if it takes time. I've learned to let go of bitterness, to accept what happened, and to be grateful for what I have now. So, whenever I think of Adisa, I say a small prayer, not for him, but for myself,